The gymnasium lights cast harsh shadows across the decorated tables as I stood frozen, my mother's words echoing in my ears like a death sentence. "You're no son of ours, Marcus. Not anymore." The entire Riverside High class of 2015 reunion had fallen silent, 200 pairs of eyes watching as my own family disowned me in front of everyone I'd grown up with. But they had no idea who I really was. In exactly 30 minutes, when Sheriff Bradley walked through those doors, everything would change forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The rain drummed against the windshield of my beat-up Honda Civic as I sat in the parking lot of Riverside Community Center, staring at the building where my high school reunion was already in full swing. Through the windows, I could see the warm glow of lights and silhouettes of people dancing, laughing, celebrating their success stories. I almost turned around and drove home 3 times. My name is Marcus Thompson, and 8 years ago, I was supposed to have it all figured out, valedictorian, full scholarship to Stanford. Parents who couldn't stop bragging about their golden boy who was going to be a doctor just like his father, Dr. Robert. Thompson was Riverside's most respected physician, and my mother, Patricia Thompson, ran the town's largest real estate agency. The Thompson name meant something in this small Colorado town of 15,000 people. That was before everything fell apart. I adjusted the collar of my only decent shirt, a wrinkled button-down I'd bought at Walmart 3 years ago, and tried to summon the courage to walk inside. The invitation had arrived 6 months ago, forwarded through 3 different addresses before it finally reached me at the tiny studio apartment. I rented above Murphy's Auto Shop on the wrong side of town. I'd almost thrown it away. The parking lot told the story I expected. BMW sedans, Mercedes SUVs, brand new pickup trucks that cost more than I made in 2 years. What it was, the vehicle of someone who'd failed at life. Through the windows, I could see my former classmates. There was Jennifer Walsh, now Jennifer Morrison. According to the name tag, I could barely make out, wearing what looked like a designer dress and showing off photos on her phone to a group of admirers. Brad Hutchins stood near the makeshift bar, his broad shoulders filling out an expensive suit. He's probably talking about his construction company that everyone said was worth millions now. And then there were my parents. Even from this distance, could spot them holding court near the head table, my father's silver hair perfectly styled, my mother radiant in a navy blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. They were surrounded by other parents, other successful members of the community, basking in the admiration and respect they'd worked their entire lives to build. They had no idea I was coming. Hell, I wasn't sure they'd even want to see me. The last conversation I'd had with them was 3 years ago, and it hadn't gone well. My father's voice still echoed in my memory. "You're 30 years old, Marcus. When are you going to stop making excuses and get your life together?" My mother had been more direct. "We didn't raise you to be a failure. Do something with yourself, or stop expecting us to bail you out." I hadn't asked them for money. Just called to let them know I was okay, that I was working, that I was trying. But trying wasn't enough for the Thompsons. In their world, you either succeed spectacularly, or you are a disappointment. There was no middle ground. Taking a deep breath, I finally opened the car door and stepped into the drizzle. The community center's parking lot was mostly full, but I deliberately arrived late, hoping to slip in unnoticed and maybe catch up with a few old friends. Before anyone realized the town's biggest disappointment had shown up, the bass from the music inside thumped through the walls as I approached the entrance. A banner stretched across the doorway. Riverside High Class of 2015, 8 years later. Underneath, in smaller letters, celebrating our success stories. I almost laughed at the irony. The girl at the check-in table looked up as I approached, her smile faltering slightly as she took in my appearance. I recognized her, Emma Rodriguez, who'd been student body president and was now, according to the banner behind her, a successful marketing executive in Denver. "Hi, welcome to the reunion," she said, her enthusiasm slightly forced. Name, Marcus Thompson. Her eyes widened in recognition, and I saw her glance over to Ward where my parents were standing. "Oh, Marcus. Wow, it's been It's been a long time. How are you? I'm good, thanks. The lie came easily. I'd been practicing it for years. She handed me a name tag and a small packet of reunion materials. Your parents are here, of course. I'm sure they'll be excited to see you. I nodded and made my way into the main hall, immediately hit by a wave of nostalgia and anxiety. The decorations were typical reunion fare, blown-up yearbook photos, a slideshow of old memories playing on screens around the room, tables covered in school colors. But it was the people that made my stomach clench. Everyone looked so ... successful. The men wore expensive suits or stylish casual wear that screamed money. The women were perfectly put together, designer dresses and jewelry that caught the light. They all had that glow that comes from financial security, from achieving the American dream that we'd all been promised if we just worked hard enough. I grabbed a drink from the bar, just a Coke, since I couldn't afford to lose any more control tonight, and tried to blend into the crowd. First few conversations were awkward but manageable. People were surprised to see me, clearly trying to figure out what I'd been up to, but most were polite enough not to push too hard when my answers were vague. Marcus? Oh my God, is that really you? I turned to find Sarah Chen approaching, a huge smile on her face. We'd been close friends in high school, and she looked amazing, confident, successful, exactly what I'd expected. Her husband was with her, a tall guy in an expensive suit who looked like he belonged in a magazine. Sarah, hi, you look great. Thank you. This is my husband, David. David, this is Marcus. We were lab partners in AP chemistry. Remember I told you about the time we accidentally set off the fire alarm? David shook my hand with the firm grip of someone who was used to making deals. Nice to meet you. Sarah told me so many stories about high school. What do you do now, Marcus? The question I'd been dreading. I'm in automotive, I said, which was technically true. I just didn't mention that I was a mechanic making $12 an hour, not a dealership owner or engineer. Oh, interesting. Which company? Murphy's Auto. It's local. Sarah's smile flickered slightly, and I could see her trying to process this information. Murphy's Auto wasn't exactly General Motors. That's great. Are you married? Kids? No, still single. Another painful admission. At 30, most of my classmates were married with houses and children and 401k plans. Was living paycheck to paycheck in a studio apartment with a mattress on the floor. The conversation continued for a few more uncomfortable minutes before Sarah and David excused themselves, promising to catch up more later. I watched them walk away, seeing Sarah lean into her husband's ear, no doubt filling him in on how far I'd fallen. This was a mistake. Should have stayed home. But before I could make my escape, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Well, what the cat dragged in. I turned to face Brad Hutchins, my former best friend, now apparently a very successful businessman based on the Rolex on his wrist and the confident way he carried himself. We'd been inseparable in high school, planning to be roommates at college, talking about being each other's best man someday. Hey Brad, good to see you. Is it? His smile was cold. I mean, I haven't heard from you in what, 5 years? 6? Not since you borrowed that money and then disappeared. My face burned. The money, $3,000 that I desperately needed when I lost my job at the tire shop. I'd promised to pay him back in 3 months. That was 4 years ago. Brad, look, about that money, don't. He held up a hand. I don't want to hear it, Marcus. You know what the funny thing is? I could write you a check right now for 10 times that amount and not even notice it missing. But it's not about the money anymore. It's about what kind. A person you turned out to be. He gestured around the room. Look around, man. Everyone else figured it out. Jennifer runs her own marketing firm. Tommy Nakamura is a software engineer at Google. Hell, even Crazy Pete Williams opened a successful restaurant chain. But you just gave up. I didn't give up, You just what? Made bad choices. Had some tough breaks. Brad's voice was getting louder, and I noticed people starting to look our way. We all had tough breaks, Marcus. The difference is the rest of us didn't use them as an excuse to stop trying. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that it wasn't that simple, that sometimes life kicks you down, and every time you try to get back up, it kicks you down again. But looking at Brad's expensive suit and confident stance, I realized he'd never understand. He'd never been where I was. "You're right," I said quietly. "I screwed up. I'm sorry about the money, Brad, I really am." Something in my tone must have gotten through to him, because his expression softened slightly. "Look, Marcus, I didn't come over here to beat you up. I just... I hoped you'd figured things out by now. We all did." "Yeah, well, some of us are late bloomers, I guess." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Brad looked like he wanted to say something else, but then his wife appeared, a stunning blonde in a red dress who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. "Honey, they're about to start the awards ceremony." "Oh, hello." She extended a perfectly manicured hand to me. "I'm Melissa Hutchins. You must be one of Brad's classmates." "Marcus Thompson," I said, shaking her hand. "Thompson... La 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 la." She looked puzzled for a moment, then her eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh, you're Dr. and Mrs. Thompson's son, I've heard. So much about your family, your parents are just wonderful. What do you do?" Before I could answer, Brad stepped in. "Marcus works in automotive. Come on, honey, we should get to our table." As they walked away, I caught the tail end of Melissa's whispered question, "Automotive? But I thought their son was supposed to be a doctor?" I needed air. I needed to get out of this room full of success stories and perfect lives and disappointed expectations. But as I turned toward the exit, I nearly collided with someone carrying a tray of appetizers. "Oh, I'm so sorry." I looked up to see a young woman about my age, wearing the black pants and white shirt of the catering staff. She was pretty in a natural way, with kind eyes and an apologetic smile. "No, that was my fault," I said, helping her steady the tray. "I wasn't watching where I was going. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Something like that, just realizing I don't belong here." She studied my face for a moment. "High school reunions are weird, aren't they? Everyone pretending they've got it all figured out." "You sound like you speak from experience." "Class of 2012. Had mine last year." "Same thing. Everyone trying to prove they'd made something of themselves." She balanced the tray on one hand and extended the other. "I'm Riley Martinez, by the way. Marcus Thompson." "Thompson... her." Eyes widened. "You're Dr. Thompson's son. I know your parents." "Well, I know of them. Your dad saved my grandmother's life 2 years ago. Emergency surgery when she had her heart attack." "He's good at that," I said, "saving people." Riley seemed to pick up on something in my tone, but not so good at other things. I was about to answer when the sound system crackled to life and a familiar voice filled the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please." It was my mother standing at the podium at the front of the room, looking every inch the successful, respectable community leader she was. Her voice carried the authority of someone who was used to being listened to. "As president of the Reunion Planning Committee, I'd like to welcome everyone to our ATIR reunion. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and to hear about all the amazing things you've accomplished." The crowd applauded, and I found myself backing toward the wall, trying to stay out of sight. Riley gave me a curious look, but didn't say anything. "Before we begin our awards ceremony," my mother continued, "I'd like to take a moment to recognize some of our classmates who have really made their mark on the world." This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. The success stories, the achievements, the public recognition of everyone who'd lived up to their potential. First, let's hear about Jennifer Morrison, who started her own marketing firm at just 25 and now employs over 50 people. And more applause as Jennifer made her way to the front, beaming with pride. She gave a short speech about following your dreams and taking risks, about how success was possible if you just believe in yourself and work hard enough. Next, we have Brad Hutchins, whose construction company was named Colorado Small Business of the Year. I watched my former best friend accept his recognition, talking about the importance of integrity and perseverance. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was talking about integrity while I still owed him money I couldn't pay back. The ceremony continued with more success stories. Tommy Nakamura in his tech career, Lisa Foster in her nonprofit organization, Pete Williams in his restaurant empire. Each name was another reminder of how far I'd fallen behind, how completely I'd failed to live up to the promise everyone thought I'd shown. And finally, my mother's voice rang out. I'd like to recognize someone very special. My own son, Marcus Thompson, whom my blood ran cold. She was going to call me up there, in front of everyone. I had to get out. But as I started to move toward the exit, I realized she'd stopped talking. The room had gone quiet, and I could see her scanning the crowd, looking for me. When our eyes met across the room, her expression changed. The proud smile faltered, replaced by something that looked like disappointment, embarrassment. Actually, she said, her voice slightly strained, Marcus isn't here tonight. He's busy with his work. The lie hung in the air for a moment, and I could see some people looking around, confused. A few had spotted me by now, and I could see them whispering to their neighbors. Pointing in my direction, my father had joined my mother at the podium now, and I could see him saying something in her ear. She nodded and turned back to the microphone. Let's move on to dinner, shall we? Please find your assigned tables. The crowd began to disperse, but I could feel eyes on me from all directions. The whispers were starting, people putting together the pieces. The doctor's son, who was supposed to be successful, standing in the back in a cheap shirt, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I had to get out of there. But as I started toward the exit again, I heard my name being called. Marcus. Thompson. I turned to see my cousin Danny approaching, a huge grin on his face. Danny was 5 years older than me, and we'd grown up like brothers. He was one of the few people in my family who'd always believed in me, even when I stopped believing in myself. Danny, what are you doing here? Your mom invited me. Said it would be a nice surprise for you. His smile faded as he took in my appearance and the expression on my face. Although judging by the look on your face, you weren't expecting to see family tonight. It's not that I just ... This whole thing was a mistake. Shouldn't have come. Danny glanced around the room, taking in the scene, the successful classmates, the expensive clothes, the general atmosphere of achievement. Rough crowd? You could say that. Come on, let's get some air. He led me out to a side door that opened onto a small patio area. The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp and cool. It felt good after tea. You want to tell me what's really going on? Danny asked, leaning against the railing. I laughed bitterly. What's going on is that I'm a 30-year-old failure at a reunion full of successful people. My parents are embarrassed to admit I'm their son. That's not true, isn't it? Did you see Mom up there? She couldn't even say my name without looking like she wanted to disappear. And Dad, ... God, Danny. The look on his face when he saw me. Danny was quiet for a moment. Marcus, I need to tell. You something about your parents? What? They talk about you? A lot, and not the way you think. I stared at him. What do you mean? I mean they're worried about you. They don't know how to help you, and they're scared that if they keep trying, they'll just make things worse. So instead, they pretend I don't exist. Instead, they lie awake at night wondering what they did wrong. They blame themselves, Marcus. They think they pushed you too hard, expected too much, and that's why things went the way. They did. This was not what I'd expected to hear. They never said anything like that to me, because they don't know how. Your dad especially, he's not good with emotional stuff. You know that? But I was there for Christmas dinner last year when your name came up. Your mom started crying, Marcus. Actually crying. Said she just wanted to know you were okay. That you were happy. I felt something twist in my chest. If that's true, then why did she lie just now? Why didn't she acknowledge me? Danny sighed. Because she's protecting you. She could see you didn't want to be called up there, and she was trying. To save you from embarrassment? By lying about where I was? By giving you an out? She was trying to be a good mom, even if it didn't come across that way. I slumped against the wall, feeling exhausted. I don't know what to do, Danny. I come to something like this, and I'm reminded of everything I was supposed to be. Everything. I'm not. But if I stay away, I'm letting everyone down and disappointing people who still care about me. You know what I think? What? I think you're so busy being ashamed of who you are that you've forgotten who you actually are. Before I could ask what he meant, the patio door opened and Riley appeared, looking concerned. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something happening inside you might want to know about. Danny and I exchanged glances. What kind of something? I asked. Your classmates are asking questions about you. And your parents? They look upset. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? About where you've been, what you're doing now? Someone mentioned seeing you at Murphy's auto shop, and people are starting to put pieces together. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. The truth. Coming out. My failure being exposed for everyone to see. Marcus, Danny said quietly, you can't run from this forever. Watch me. But as I started to walk away, Riley caught my arm. Wait, before you go, can I ask you something? What? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Brad looked like he wanted to say something else, but then his wife appeared, a stunning blonde in a red dress who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Honey, they're about to start the awards ceremony. She extended a perfectly manicured hand to me. I'm Melissa Hutchins. You must be one of Brad's classmates. Marcus Thompson, I said, shaking her hand. Thompson, ... She looked puzzled for a moment, then her eyes lit up with recognition. Oh. You're Dr. and Mrs. Thompson's son. So much about your family. Your parents are just wonderful. What do you do? Before I could answer, Brad stepped in. Marcus works in automotive. Come on, honey, we should get to our table. As they walked away, I caught the tail end of Melissa's whispered question, automotive. But I thought their son was supposed to be a doctor. I needed air. Needed to get out of this room full of success stories and perfect lives, and disappointed expectations. But as I turned toward the exit, I nearly collided with someone carrying a tray of appetizers. Oh, I'm so sorry. I looked up to see a young woman about my age, wearing the black pants and white shirt of the catering staff. She was pretty in a natural way, with kind eyes and an apologetic smile. No, that was my fault, I said, helping her steady the tray. I wasn't watching where I was going. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Something like that. Just realizing I don't belong here. She studied my face for a moment. High school reunions are weird, aren't they? Everyone pretending they've got it all figured out. Sound like you speak from experience. Class of 2012. Had mine last year. Same thing. Everyone trying to prove they'd made something of themselves. She balanced the tray on one hand and extended the other. I'm Riley Martinez, by the way, Marcus Thompson. Thompson, ... Her eyes widened. You're Dr. Thompson's son. I know your parents. Oh. Well, I know of them. Your dad saved my grandmother's life 2 years ago. Emergency surgery when she had her heart attack. He's good at that, I said, saving people. To pick up on something in my tone, but not so good at other things. I was about to answer when the sound system crackled to life and a familiar voice filled the room. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. It was my mother, standing at the podium at the front of the room, looking every inch the successful, respectable community leader she was. Her voice carried the authority of someone who was used to being listened to. As president of the Reunion Planning Committee, I'd like to welcome everyone to our 8-year reunion. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and to hear about all the amazing things you've accomplished. The crowd applauded, and I found myself backing toward the wall, trying to stay out of sight. Riley gave me a curious look but didn't say anything. Before we begin our awards ceremony, my mother continued, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some of our classmates who have really made their mark on the world. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. The success stories, the achievements, the public recognition of everyone who'd lived up to their potential. First, let's hear about Jennifer Morrison, who started her own marketing firm at just 25 and now employs over 50 people. More applause as Jennifer made her way to the front, beaming with pride. She gave a short speech about following your dreams and taking risks, about how success was possible if you just believe in yourself and work hard enough. Next, we have Brad Hutchins, whose construction company was named Colorado Small Business of the Year. I watched my former best friend accept his recognition, talking about the importance of integrity and perseverance. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was talking about integrity while I still owed him money. I couldn't pay back. The ceremony continued with more success stories. Tommy Nakamura and his tech career, Lisa Foster and her nonprofit organization, Pete Williams and his restaurant empire. Each name was another reminder of how far I'd fallen behind. How completely I'd failed to live up to the promise everyone thought I'd shown. And finally, my mother's voice rang out. I'd like to recognize someone very special. My own son, Marcus Thompson, whom my blood ran cold. She was going to call me up there, in front of everyone. I had to get out. But as I started to move toward the exit, I realized she'd stopped talking. The room had gone quiet, and I could see her scanning the crowd, looking for me. When our eyes met across the room, her expression changed. The proud smile faltered, replaced by something that looked like disappointment, embarrassment. She said, her voice slightly strained. Marcus isn't here tonight. He's busy with his work. The lie hung in the air for a moment, and I could see some people looking around, confused. A few had spotted me by now, and I could see them whispering to their neighbors, pointing in my direction. My father had joined my mother at the podium now, and I could see him saying something in her ear. She nodded and turned back to the microphone. Let's move on to dinner, shall we? Please find your assigned tables. The crowd began to disperse, but I could feel eyes on me from all directions. The whispers were starting, people putting together the pieces. The doctor's son, who was supposed to be successful, standing in the back in a cheap shirt, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I had to get out of there. But as I started toward the exit again, I heard my name being called. Marcus. Thompson. I turned to see my cousin Danny approaching, a huge grin on his face. Danny was 5 years older than me, and we'd grown up like brothers. He was one of the few people in my family who'd always believed in me, even when I stopped believing in myself. Danny, what are you doing here? Your mom invited me. Said it would be a nice surprise for you. His smile faded as he took in my appearance and the expression on my face. Although judging by the look on your face, you weren't expecting to see family tonight. It's not that I just... This whole thing was a mistake. I shouldn't have come. Danny glanced around the room, taking in the scene, the successful classmates, the expensive clothes, the general atmosphere of achievement. Rough crowd. Could say that. Come on, let's get some air. He led me out to a side door that opened onto a small patio area. The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp and cool. It felt good after tea. You want to tell me what's really going on? Danny asked, leaning against the railing. I laughed bitterly. What's going on is that I'm a 30-year-old failure at a reunion full of successful people, and my parents are embarrassed to admit I'm their son. That's not true, isn't it? Did you see Mom up there? She couldn't even say my name without looking like she wanted to disappear. And Dad, God. Danny, the look on his face when he saw me. Danny was quiet for a moment. Marcus, I need to tell you something about your parents. What? They talk about you a lot, and not the way you think. I stared at him. What do you mean? I mean, they're worried about you. They don't know how to help you. And they're scared that if they keep trying, they'll just make things worse. So instead, they pretend I don't exist? No, instead they lie awake at night wondering what they did wrong. They blame themselves, Marcus. They think they pushed you too hard, expected too much, and that's why things went the way they did. This was not what I'd expected to hear. They'd never said anything like that to me, because they don't know how. Your dad especially, he's not good with emotional stuff. You know that? But I was there for Christmas dinner last year when your name came up. Your mom started crying, Marcus. Actually crying. Said she just wanted to know you were okay. That you were happy. I felt something twist in my chest. If that's true, then why did she lie just now? Why didn't she acknowledge me? Danny sighed. Because she's protecting you. She could see you didn't want to be called up there, and she was trying. To save you from embarrassment? By lying about where I was? By giving you an out. She was trying to be a good mom, even if it didn't come across that way. I slumped against the wall, feeling exhausted. I don't know what to do, Danny. I come to something like this, and I'm reminded of everything I was supposed to be. Everything. I'm not. But if I stay away, I'm letting everyone down and disappointing people who still care about me. You know what I think? What? I think you're so busy being ashamed of who you are that you've forgotten who you actually are. Before I could ask what he meant, the patio door opened and Riley appeared, looking concerned. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something happening inside you might want to know about. Danny and I exchanged glances. What kind of something? I asked. Your classmates are asking questions about you. And your parents. They look upset. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? About where you've been? What you're doing now? Someone mentioned seeing you at Murphy's auto shop, and people are starting to put pieces together. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. The truth. Coming out, my failure being exposed for everyone to see. Marcus, Danny said quietly, you can't run from this forever. Watch me. But as I started to walk away, Riley caught my arm. Wait, before you go, can I ask you something? What? That story about your dad saving my grandmother? She told me something else about that day. She said when she woke up after surgery, there was a young man sitting in the waiting room who'd been there all night. Someone who looked just like the doctor, but younger. The nurses said he'd driven 2 hours to get there when he heard she was sick, even though he didn't really know her. I stared at her. How did you? That was you, wasn't it? You came to the hospital that night. Danny was, looking at me with surprise. Marcus, you never told me about that. It wasn't a big deal. Just, she seemed like a nice lady when I met her at the shop, and I knew she didn't have any family nearby. Sat in a hospital waiting room all night for a customer. Riley's. The voice was soft. Someone you barely knew. I mean, like I said, it wasn't a big deal. Maybe not to you, but it was to her. She talks about it all the time. The young man who cared enough to make sure she wasn't alone. Danny was shaking his head. You wonder why your parents are proud of you? They're not proud of me, Danny. They're embarrassed by me. No, Marcus. They're proud of who you are. They're just disappointed about what you've achieved. There's a difference. Before I could respond, the patio door burst open and Brad Hutchins appeared, his face flushed with anger. There you are, we need to talk. Brad, I don't want any trouble, too late for that. You know what just happened there? Mother asked me about you, asked how you were doing, if I'd seen you lately. And I had to stand there and tell Doctor Patricia Thompson that her son owes me money and hasn't bothered to return my calls in 4 years. Danny stepped forward. Hey, take it easy. No, I'm tired of taking it easy. This guy was supposed to be the smart one, the one who had it all figured out. We all looked up to him in high school. And now look at him. Brad, please, I said, feeling my face burned with shame. Can we not do this here? Do what? Tell the truth. Everyone in there is wondering what happened to the great Marcus Thompson, and I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. The patio door opened again, and this time my parents appeared, both looking strained and upset. My mother's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the worry lines around her eyes, and my father's usual confident bearing seemed diminished. Marcus, my mother said, her voice tight with emotion. We need to talk. Actually, Mrs. Thompson, Brad said, his voice still angry. I think you need to know exactly what your son has been up to. Brad, don't, I warned. They deserve to know. They deserve to know that their golden boy has been lying to them, borrowing money he can't pay back. It's working as a mechanic and living in some dump apartment above a garage. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the hurt in my parents' eyes, the disappointment that Brad's words had confirmed their worst fears. Is that true? My father asked quietly. I wanted to deny it, to explain that it was more complicated than that. But what was the point? The truth was out now, yes, I said. It's true. My mother's hand went to her throat, a gesture I remembered from childhood. When she was trying not to cry, Marcus, why didn't you tell us? Because I knew how you'd react. I knew you'd be disappointed. Disappointed? My father's voice was rising now. Disappointed doesn't begin to cover it. We raised you better than this. We gave you every opportunity, Every advantage, and this is what you do with it. Robert, my mother said quietly, but he was just getting started. No, Patricia, I'm tired of making excuses for him. He had a full scholarship to Stanford. A full scholarship. Do you know how many kids would kill for that opportunity? And he threw it away. Just threw it away. I didn't throw it away, I said, my own anger finally surfacing. I had a breakdown, Dad. I couldn't handle the pressure anymore. Everyone has pressure, Marcus. Everyone faces challenges. That's not an excuse to give up. Give up? You think? I gave up. I've been working my ass off for 8 years, trying to get back on my feet, trying to figure out who I am outside of your expectations. Working as a mechanic, living in poverty. This is your idea of getting back on your feet? Danny stepped between us. Okay, everyone needs to calm down. Stay out of this, Danny, my father snapped. This is about my son and the choices he's made. Your son? Brad laughed bitterly. Dr. Thompson, with all due respect, I'm not sure Marcus deserves to be called your son anymore? The words hung in the air like a physical blow. I saw my mother flinch, saw my father's face go pale, and then my mother spoke, her voice quiet but carrying clearly in the sudden silence. You're right. Everyone turned to stare. At her, Patricia, my father, started. No, Robert. Brad's right. A son doesn't lie to his parents for years. A son doesn't borrow money from friends and then disappears. A son doesn't embarrass his family by showing up to public events looking like this. She gestured at my wrinkled shirt, my scuffed shoes, my general appearance of someone who'd given up on himself. Marcus, she said, and her voice was steady now, cold and controlled. You're no son of ours. Not anymore. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd expected disappointment, anger, even disgust. But this felt like being erased, like 30 years of being their child had just been wiped away with 8 words. Patricia. You don't mean that, Danny said, his voice shocked. I do mean it. We have a reputation in this community, Daniel. We have a standing that we've worked our entire lives to build. And I won't have it destroyed by someone who's chosen to throw his life away. My father was nodding slowly, his face hard. Your mother's right. We've done everything we could for you, Marcus. We've given you chance after chance, and you've squandered every one of them. Mom, Dad, please no. My mother's voice was final. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. But you won't do it as our son. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear music and laughter from inside the building, the sound of people celebrating their lives and achievements. But out here on this patio, my family had just officially ended. Riley was staring at my parents with shock and disgust. Danny looked like he'd been punched. Even Brad seemed surprised by how far things had gone. But it was the look on my parents' faces that hurt the most. Not anger, not disappointment, but relief. Like they'd finally said something they'd been wanting to say for years. Fine, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. If that's how you feel, then fine. I turned and walked away, hearing Danny call my name behind me. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to get out of there before it completely fell apart. The parking lot was quiet, except for the distant sound of music from the reunion. I fumbled with my car keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get them in the lock. 30 years. 30 years of being their son, and it was over. Just like that, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the community center and trying to process what had just happened. Through the windows, I could see the reunion continuing, people dancing and laughing and having the time of their lives. They probably didn't even realize that outside in the parking lot, someone's entire world had just collapsed. My phone buzzed. A text from Danny. Marcus, don't leave. We need to talk. But I was done talking. I was done trying to explain myself. Done trying to justify my existence to people who had already decided I wasn't worth their time. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving behind the reunion, my former classmates, and the family that had just disowned me as I drove through the dark streets of Riverside, past the houses where I'd grown up, past the schools and parks where I'd spent my childhood, I tried to figure out what came next. How do you rebuild your life when everyone you've ever cared about has written you off? But as I turned onto Main Street, I saw something that made me slow down. Police cars. A lot of them parked outside the Riverside Savings and Loan, the bank, was lit up like Christmas, and there were people in suits going in and out. Something big was happening. Something that would change everything, but I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that I was alone, disowned, and driving toward an uncertain future in a beat-up Honda. With a tank full of gas and nowhere left to go, the reunion was behind me now. But the real story was just beginning. I'd been driving aimlessly for about 20 minutes when I saw her on the side of Highway 34, just outside the Riverside city limits. A woman in what looked like an expensive dress, standing next to a black sedan with its hood up, steam rising into the cool night air. She was on her phone, pacing back and forth, clearly agitated. My first instinct was to keep driving. After what had just happened at the reunion, I wasn't exactly in a helpful mood. But something made me slow down. Maybe the way she kept looking. At her watch, or how isolated this stretch of road was at night. I pulled over about 30 feet ahead of her car and got out. "Excuse me," I called out as I approached. "Car trouble?" She spun around, and I could see she was young, maybe mid, with dark hair pulled back and an elegant updo that was now slightly disheveled. Her dress was definitely designer, the kind of thing that costs more than I made in a month. But what struck me most was the genuine panic in her eyes. "Thank God," she said, lowering her phone. "Yes, it just started overheating about 5 minutes ago. I was on my way to Denver for an emergency board meeting, and my phone keeps dropping calls out here. Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated for a moment, probably taking in my wrinkled shirt and general appearance. "Are you... Do you know about cars?" Despite everything that had happened tonight, I almost smiled. You could say that. I'm a mechanic. Really flooded her face. "Really? I mean, I know it's late and you don't know me, but if you could just tell me what's wrong, I'd be happy to pay you for your time." I popped the hood and immediately saw the problem. "Your radiator hose has a split in it. See this? Puddle under the car? That's your coolant leaking out. Is it fixable tonight?" "Not really." "You'd need a new hose, and even if we could find one, it's not the kind of repair you do on the side of the road in the dark." Her shoulders sagged. "This is a disaster. I have to be in Denver by midnight for this meeting. There's so much riding on it, and if I'm not there..." She trailed off, looking like she might cry. For someone who was clearly used to expensive things and successful situations, she seemed genuinely overwhelmed. "Where in Denver?" I asked. "Downtown, the Marriott on 17th Street. I checked my watch. It was almost 10:30, and Denver was at least an hour and a half drive from here. "You're not going to make it by midnight, even if we got your car fixed right now." She sat down on the guardrail, not seeming to care that she was probably ruining her expensive dress. I'm such an idiot. I should have left earlier, should have taken a flight, should have done a dozen things differently. There was something about her defeated posture that reminded me of how I'd felt sitting in my car outside the reunion. Sometimes life just kicks you when you're down, and there's nothing you can do but take it. "Look," I said, surprising myself I could drive you to Denver if you want. She looked up at me, startled. "What?" "I'm headed that way anyway," I lied. "It's no big deal." "I couldn't ask you to do that. You don't even know me." "Marcus," I said, extending my hand. "Now you know me." "Ike!" She shook my hand, and I could feel the tension in her grip. "I'm Victoria Ashworth. And this would literally save my life right now." The name meant nothing to me, but the way she said it suggested it should have. "Okay, Victoria Ashworth, let's get you to Denver." As we walked toward my Honda, I saw her take in its appearance, the rust spots, the duct tape on the bumper, the general air of a vehicle that had seen better days. "Is it... safe?" she asked hesitantly. "It's not much to look at, but it runs. Gets me where I need to go." She nodded and got into the passenger seat, immediately struggling with the manual window crank and the broken seat adjustment lever. Felt a flush of embarrassment watching someone who was clearly used to luxury trying to navigate my beat-up car. "Sorry about the accommodations," I said as I started the engine. "Not exactly what you're used to, I'm guessing." "It's fine," she said quickly. though I could tell she was trying to be polite. I really appreciate this, Marcus. It's more than you know. As we pulled onto the highway, I couldn't help but be curious about this emergency board meeting that had her so stressed. If you don't mind me asking, what kind of meeting is so important it can't wait until morning? Victoria was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the dark Colorado landscape. It's complicated. My company is going through some challenges right now. Tonight's meeting could determine whether we survive or not. What kind of company? We manufacture medical devices, surgical instruments mostly. We employ about 800 people across 3 facilities. I let out a low whistle. That's a lot of jobs on the line. Exactly. If we can't secure this. New funding tonight, we'll have to start laying people off next week, maybe even close entirely. The weight of what she was dealing with suddenly put my own problems in perspective. I was feeling sorry for myself because my parents had disowned me and my classmates thought I was a failure. She was trying to save 800 jobs. What happened? If you don't mind me asking, Victoria sighed. One of our biggest contracts fell through last month. A hospital chain that was supposed to purchase $50 million worth of equipment over the next 2 years. They decided to go with a Chinese manufacturer instead. Cheaper pricing. Ouch. Yeah. And then we had a quality control issue with one of our product lines. Nothing dangerous, just some instruments that didn't meet our usual standards. But it cost us another major client and damaged our reputation. So you're looking for investors to keep you afloat? There's a group in Denver that's interested in acquiring us. They want to buy the company, keep most of the employees, and merge us with another medical device firm they own. It's not ideal I'd lose control of the company my father built, but it's better than bankruptcy. Something in her voice when she mentioned her father made me glance over at her. No. He passed away 2 years ago. Left me the company when I was 23, which everyone said was crazy. Maybe they were right. I understood the pressure she was under. Not just the responsibility for hundreds of employees, but the weight of carrying on her father's legacy. I'm sure he knew what he was doing, I said. 23 is young, but if he trusted you with it, he must have seen something. Hope. So, sometimes I feel like I'm just pretending to know what I'm doing and hoping no one notices. I laughed, but not unkindly. Join the club. Most of us are just making it up as we go along. Even you. Especially me. 8 hours ago, I thought the worst thing that could happen tonight was running into my ex-girlfriend at a reunion. Now I'm driving a stranger to Denver because my family disowned me and I have nowhere else to be. Victoria turned to look at me. Your family disowned you. Long story. Let's just say they had certain expectations for their son, and I didn't live up to them. What kind of expectations? I found myself telling her about my parents, about the scholarship to Stanford, about the breakdown that derailed everything. Maybe it was because she was a stranger, or maybe it was because she'd shared her own troubles. But I found myself being more honest than I'd been with anyone in years. So you left Stanford and became a mechanic, she asked when I'd finished. Not exactly that simple. I tried to go back, tried to finish my degree at a local school, tried a dozen different things. But I kept sabotaging myself. Every time something started going well, I'd find a way to screw it up. Why? It was a question I'd been asking myself for years. I think I was so afraid of failing again that I made sure I failed first. Does that make sense? More than you know, Victoria said quietly. After my dad died, every decision I made was about not disappointing him. But when you're making choices based on fear, you usually end up making the wrong ones. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in our own thoughts. The highway was mostly empty this time of night, just the occasional truck or late-night traveler. The radio played softly in the background, old songs that reminded me of better times. Can I ask you something? Victoria said as we passed the exit for Thornton. Sure. Why did you stop to help me? You said you were having the worst night of your life, and then you see a stranger with car trouble. Most people would have kept driving. I thought about it for a moment. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe because you look like I felt. What do you mean, like someone who was trying really hard to hold it together and not quite managing it? Victoria laughed, but there was sadness in it. That obvious, huh? To someone who's been there? Yeah. She was quiet for a moment, then said, You. No, when I saw you walking toward my car, my first thought was to be scared. Single woman, broken down car, strange man approaching in the dark. But there was something about you that seemed ... safe, genuine. My rugged good looks and expensive car probably helped, I said, trying to lighten the mood. She laughed, a real laugh this time. Definitely. Nothing says trustworthy like duct tape in rust spots. Hey, that duct tape is holding this whole operation together. I can see that. Is that what's keeping the passenger door closed? Among other things. As we entered the Denver metro area, Victoria's phone finally started getting consistent signal, and she immediately called someone to let them know she was on her way. Mr. Patterson? It's Victoria Ashworth. Yes, I know I'm late. I had car trouble. But I should be there in about 20 minutes. Yes, I understand the importance of tonight. I'll be there, I promise. When she hung up, she looked stressed again. They're not happy? Will they wait for you? They have to. I'm the only one who can sign the paperwork. As we pulled into downtown Denver, I was struck by how different this world was from mine. Glass towers reaching into the sky, expensive restaurants still serving late dinners, people in suits walking purposefully even at this hour. This was Victoria's world success. Money, power, responsibility. The Marriott is just up here, she said, pointing ahead. You can just drop me at the front entrance. But as we pulled up to the hotel, I could see through the lobby windows that there was some kind of commotion inside. Security guards, people in suits looking agitated, someone who might have been a police officer. That's strange, Victoria said, following my gaze. I wonder what's going on. She got out of the car and started toward the entrance, but one of the security guards intercepted her. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the hotel is dealing with a security situation right now. We're not allowing anyone new into the building. I have a meeting here, Victoria said, her voice tight with panic. A very important business meeting. I understand, but you don't understand. Her composure finally cracked. I have 800 employees whose jobs depend on this meeting. Happening tonight. The security guard looked sympathetic but unmoved. I'm sorry, ma'am, no exceptions. Victoria turned back toward my car, her face pale. This was it, after everything she'd been through. After driving all night to get here, she was going to lose her company because of some random security situation. But sometimes, when everything seems hopeless, that's when things take an unexpected turn, because that's when Sheriff Bradley pulled up. The black SUV that pulled up behind us wasn't like the typical police cars I was used to seeing in Riverside. This was something federal, tinted windows, multiple antennas, the kind of vehicle that meant serious business. When the door opened and a tall man in a perfectly pressed uniform stepped out, I could see the gold stars on his collar that marked him as someone with real authority. Sheriff Bradley was probably in his mid-50s, with graying hair and the kind of presence that commanded immediate respect. But what caught my attention wasn't his uniform or his bearing. It was the way he scanned the scene. His eyes methodical and calculating, like someone who was used to dealing with complex situations. What's the situation here? He asked the security guard, his voice carrying the authority of someone who expected immediate answers. Sheriff Bradley, the guard said, straightening up. We've got a security lockdown due to some suspicious activity in the building. Federal agents are investigating possible financial crimes connected to one of the business meetings tonight. Victoria grabbed my arm, her face going pale. Financial crimes. Marcus, what if this is about my meeting? What if someone's been investigating the acquisition? Sheriff Bradley's attention shifted to us, and I saw him take in Victoria's expensive dress. An obvious distress? Then his gaze moved to me. For a moment, his expression changed. Not recognition exactly, but something like curiosity. Ma'am, are you connected to the business meeting on the 15th floor? He asked Victoria. Yes, I'm Victoria Ashworth. I'm supposed to be meeting with Patterson Holdings about acquiring my company. This is crucial. If this meeting doesn't happen tonight, 800 people are going to lose their jobs. The sheriff studied her for a moment, then looked back at me. And you are Marcus Thompson? I just gave her a ride here when her car broke down. Thompson, he repeated, And now there was definitely something in his voice. From Riverside. It was surprised he knew the town. Yes, sir. Son of Dr. Robert Thompson. My stomach tightened. Great. Even here, an hour and a half from home, my family's reputation preceded me, yes, sir. Though not anymore, apparently. Sheriff Bradley's eyebrows rose slightly at that, but before he could respond, his radio crackled. To life, Sheriff? We've got the Al Clara from the federal team. Turns out it was a false alarm. Someone reported suspicious wire transfers, but they were legitimate escrow funds for a business acquisition. Relief flooded Victoria's face. I mean, the meeting can proceed? Looks like it, Sheriff Bradley said, then spoke into his radio. Copy that. Release the lockdown. The security guard stepped aside, and Victoria started toward the entrance. Then turned back to me. Marcus, I can't thank you enough. You literally saved my company tonight. I just gave you a ride. You did the hard part. No, you did more than that. You ... She paused, seeming to struggle with how to express what she meant. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world. People who help strangers without expecting anything in return. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card and what looked like a check. Please, let me pay you for your time, for the gas. I don't want your money, I said, meaning it. Then, at least take my card. If you ever need anything. Anything at all? Please call me. I took the card, though I doubted I'd ever use it. Victoria Ashworth, CEO Ashworth Medical Technologies. Her world and mine couldn't be more different. She headed into the hotel, moving with the confident stride of someone who just dodged a bullet and was ready to fight for her company's survival. I watched her disappear into the lobby, then turned to head back to my car. Mr. Thompson? Sheriff Bradley's voice stopped me. I turned to find him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Yes, sir. Walk with me for a moment. It wasn't really a request. We moved away from the hotel. Entrance. Toward a small plaza area with benches and decorative lighting. The sheriff seemed to be choosing his words carefully. That was a kind thing you did tonight, he said finally. Helping that young woman. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, they wouldn't have. Most people would have driven right past a stranded motorist, especially late at night. But you stopped, and then you went out of your way to drive her all the way to Denver. I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. She needed help. Yes, she did. And now her company will survive, and 800 people will keep their jobs. Because you chose to be a good Samaritan. He paused. Do you realize the ripple effect of what you did tonight? I just gave someone a ride. You did more than that. Ms. Ashworth's company manufactures surgical instruments that save lives. If her company had failed, those instruments wouldn't be available to hospitals. Patients would suffer. Families would lose loved ones. The weight of what he was saying started to sink in. I'd been so focused on my own problems that I hadn't thought about the bigger picture. The point is, Sheriff Bradley continued, character isn't about what you do when people are watching. It's about what you do when nobody's watching, when there's nothing in it for you. Sheriff, I appreciate what you're saying, but if you knew what happened earlier tonight, your parents disowned you at a high school reunion. I stared at him. How did you small state, Mr. Thompson? Word travels fast, especially when it involves prominent families. His expression softened slightly. I also know that you've been struggling for the past few years. You're working as a mechanic despite having the intelligence and capability to do much more. And you know, I'm not exactly the kind of person you should be praising. Contrary, you're exactly the kind of person I should be praising. He was quiet for a moment, watching the late-night traffic move through downtown Denver. Can I tell you something about your father? What about him? We've worked together on several cases over the years. Medical examiner duties, consultation on suspicious deaths. He's a good doctor, a skilled surgeon, and he saved a lot of lives. I know that. But do you know what he told me the last time we worked together? About 6 months ago, there was a car accident on Highway 34. Family of 4, tourists from out of state. The father had massive internal injuries, and your father spent 8 hours in surgery trying to save him. I waited, not sure where this was going. He succeeded. The man lived, reunited with his family, and went back to his life in Ohio. And when I complimented your father on his skill, you know what he said? What? he said, "Sheriff. I'm good at fixing what's broken in the operating room. But I never learned how to fix what's broken at home." The words hit me like a physical blow. He said that. "It's proud of your medical knowledge, Marcus. It's proud that you use it to help people, even in unconventional ways." He told me about the time you correctly diagnosed a customer at the auto shop with early signs of a heart attack and probably saved his life. Mrs. Chen's husband. But how did he? Your father has been keeping track of you more than you know. Every time you help someone, every time you go out of your way for a stranger, somehow word gets back to him. Sheriff Bradley turned to face me directly. He knows about tonight, too. Tonight. Ms. Ashworth called her assistant from the hotel lobby. Her assistant called the Patterson Holdings people to let them know she'd arrived safely. One of the Patterson Holdings executives mentioned the story to his wife over dinner tomorrow. His wife happens to be a nurse at Denver General, where your father sometimes consults. My head was spinning. You're saying my father is going to hear about what happened tonight? I'm saying your father already knows the kind of man you are, and so do I. Sheriff Bradley reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, which is why I came here tonight. I don't understand. Marcus, how much do you know about the recent bank robberies in Colorado? The question seemed to come out of nowhere. Bank robberies? Not much. I heard something on the news about a string of them. 7 banks in the past 3 months, small towns exactly like Riverside. The perpetrators are sophisticated. They know bank security systems, employee schedules, even police response times. Okay, but what does that have to do with me? Believe the next target is Riverside Savings and Loan. Tonight, my blood ran cold. Tonight. But the reunion is the perfect cover. Most of the town's prominent citizens are at the community center, including the bank president and half the police force. The perpetrators have been planning this for weeks. How do you know all this? Because 3 hours ago, we arrested one of their associates trying to plant surveillance equipment near the bank. Under questioning, he revealed the plan. Sheriff Bradley's expression was grim. Marcus, they've been watching your town learning. The patterns. They know who has access to what, who has security codes, who has the kind of reputation that would get them into places without questions. I still don't understand what this has to do with me. Sheriff Bradley handed me the envelope. Open it. With trembling fingers, I tore open the envelope and pulled out an official-looking document. As I read, my world shifted on its axis. This is an appointment to a federal task force. The Colorado Financial Crimes Task Force, to be specific. We need someone who can go into small towns without raising suspicion. Someone who understands how these communities work, who people trust. But I'm just a mechanic who has an undergraduate degree from Stanford in criminal justice, even though you never finished. Who scored in the 98th percentile on the federal law enforcement aptitude test you took 5 years ago. Has been solving problems and helping people his entire life, just not in ways that his parents understood. I stared at the document, unable to process what I was reading. You've been investigating me? We've been watching you, Marcus, waiting for the right moment, the right case. Tonight, when you proved once again that you're exactly the kind of person we need, I decided it was time to make the offer. What? Kind of offer a chance to do something that matters, a chance to use your skills to help people on a scale you never imagined, a chance to become someone your parents and you can be proud of. The plaza around us seemed to fade away as the implications of what he was saying sank in. A federal appointment, a real job, a career, a chance to matter, or something else, Sheriff Bradley said quietly. The task force salary starts at $85,000 a year with full federal benefits. More than enough to pay back your debts and start over. I thought about Brad, about the money I owed him, about the look of disappointment on my parents' faces. Why me? I asked finally. There have to be hundreds of qualified candidates. Because this job isn't about qualifications on paper, Marcus. It's about character. It's about someone who will do the right thing, even when nobody's watching, even when there's no reward for it. He paused. It's about someone who will drive a stranger to Denver because she needs help, even on the worst night of his life. I looked down at the appointment letter again, trying to make sense of this sudden turn in my life. A few hours ago, I'd been a failure, a disappointment, someone my own parents had disowned. Now I was being offered a chance to be something more. What would I have to do right now? Help us stop a bank robbery and catch a group of criminals who have been terrorizing small towns across Colorado. Sheriff Bradley's expression was serious. Are you in, Marcus? As I stood there in the plaza in downtown Denver, holding a federal appointment in my hands, I realized that sometimes the worst moments of your life are just setups for the best moments. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. Yes, I said. I'm in. The ride back to Riverside was nothing like the drive to Denver. Instead of my beat-up Honda, I was now sitting in the passenger seat of Sheriff Bradley's federal SUV, watching the Colorado landscape blur past at 90 miles per hour. A federal badge sat heavy in my jacket pocket, along with a temporary weapon permit and communication equipment that connected me directly to the FBI's Denver field office. The suspects call themselves the Prairie Wolves, Sheriff Bradley explained. As he navigated the dark highway with practiced ease, they've been operating for 8 months, but these bank jobs are just their latest evolution. Started with credit card fraud, moved into identity theft. They're hitting small-town banks because the security is lighter and response times are longer. I studied the file he'd given me, trying to absorb years of law enforcement training. In the span of an hour, photos of suspects, surveillance footage from previous robberies, financial records showing a sophisticated operation that had stolen over $2 million across 7 states. How many people are we talking about? Core group of 4, but they recruit local help in each town. Someone with inside knowledge, someone who can provide access or information. He glanced at me. In Riverside's case, we believe they've compromised. Someone who works at the bank? Any idea who? That's where you come in. You know this town, these people. You'll be able to spot things that an outside investigator might miss. The weight of responsibility was starting to sink in. 3 hours ago, I'd been a mechanic whose biggest problem was owing money to an old friend. Now I was a federal agent, racing to stop a bank robbery in my hometown. Sheriff, can I ask you something? Call me John. We're partners now. John, then, how long have you been planning this? The recruitment, I mean? He was quiet for a moment, concentrating on passing. A slow-moving truck. Marcus, do you remember a case about 2 years ago? It's a missing child in Riverside? I did remember. 8-year-old Emma Brennan had disappeared from a playground, and the whole town had turned out to search for her. She was found safe, right? Some kind of misunderstanding? She was found safe because you found her. I stared at him. What are you talking about? The police found her. The police found her because you called in a tip about seeing a man matching the suspect's description at Murphy's Auto Shop. You remembered him from a news report and made the connection. That was just... anyone would have done the same thing. But not everyone would have followed up like you did. After you called the police, you spent your own time tracking down the license plate number, reviewing security footage from neighboring businesses, building a timeline that helped us locate the suspect's hideout. This was news to me. I just wanted to help find the kid. Exactly, and that's when I first heard your name. Detective Walsh from Riverside PD called me because the case had interstate implications. And he couldn't stop talking about this civilian, who'd basically done half the investigative work for free. Detective Walsh. I remembered him now, a serious guy in his 40s who'd interviewed me about what I'd seen. I'd never thought much about it afterward. I started keeping track of you after that, John continued. Every time there was an incident, in Riverside, where a civilian went above and beyond to help, your name kept coming up. The tourist who had a heart attack at Murphy's, you not only helped with first aid, he stayed with his family at the hospital for 6 hours. The elderly. A woman whose purse was stolen, you spent your weekend checking pawn shops and actually found it. Those weren't big deals. They were to the people you helped. And they formed a pattern that told me everything I needed to know about your character. He took the exit for Riverside, and I could see the familiar lights of my hometown in the distance. Marcus, the federal government doesn't recruit people just because they're smart or skilled. We recruit people we can trust to do the right thing when everything is on the line. As we drove through Riverside's quiet streets, I saw the town with new eyes. Every corner, every building held memories of the life I'd been trying to escape. But now, I was returning as something different. Not the town failure, but a federal agent with a job to do. Okay, I said, settling into the role. What's our immediate plan? First, we need to establish surveillance around the bank without alerting the suspects. They've been watching the town for weeks, so they'll notice anything out of the ordinary. Reunion actually helps with that. Most people who'd normally be on the streets are at the community center. Exactly. Which means the suspects probably think they have a clear field. John turned onto Main Street, and I could see Riverside Savings and Loan ahead of us. Its brick facade dark, except for the security lights. But we need to be careful. If they realize we're onto them, they might panic, and people could get hurt. About evacuating the area? Can't risk it. They're monitoring police communications, which they probably are. An evacuation order would tip them off immediately. John pulled into a parking space across from the bank. We need to catch them in the act with evidence that will stick in court. I studied the bank building, trying to think like a criminal. How would they get in? The front door is too exposed, but the back entrance leads to an alley, where intel suggests they have someone on the inside who can disable the alarm system. Once that's down, they can take their time with the safe. The safe is old, but solid. It would take them at least 30 minutes to crack it, maybe longer. John looked at me with interest. How do you know that? I used to date Amy Hendricks in high school. Her dad was the bank manager then, and she used to brag about how secure their vault was. Said it was installed in 1987 and had never been successfully breached. That's exactly the kind of local knowledge we need. John activated his radio. Control, this is Bradley. Agent Thompson and I are in position for surveillance. Agent Thompson. Hearing those words sent a strange thrill through me. 24 hours ago, I couldn't have imagined anyone calling me that. Copy, Sheriff Bradley. All units are standing by. How many agents are involved in this? 12 total, but most are positioned outside town to prevent escape routes. You and I are the primary surveillance team because we need someone who won't look out of place if we're spotted. As we settled in to wait, I found myself thinking about the reunion, probably still going on just a few blocks away. My parents were likely still there, probably fielding questions and condolences about their disappointing son. Brad was probably telling anyone who'd listen about what a failure I'd become. They had no idea that at this very moment, I was sitting in a federal vehicle, wearing a badge, preparing to stop a major crime. Second thoughts? John asked, apparently. Reading my expression? No, not about this. Just thinking about everything that's happened tonight, your parents, among other things. It's strange how quickly life can change. A few hours ago, they were telling me I wasn't their son anymore. Now I'm a federal agent. Do you plan to tell them? I don't know. Part of me wants to, just to see the look on their faces. But another part of me thinks maybe it's better this way. Maybe some bridges are meant to stay burned. John was quiet. For a moment, can I give you some advice from someone who's been in law enforcement for 25 years? Sure. This job, this badge, it doesn't define who you are. It's just a tool for doing the work you were already doing, helping people, solving problems, making things better. The person your parents disowned tonight is the same person who stopped to help a stranger, the same person who found a missing child. It's the same person who sits with scared families in hospital waiting rooms. I'm not sure they'd see it that way. Maybe not right now. But parents have a way of coming around when they realize their children have found their calling. Before I could respond, John's radio crackled with activity. All units, we have movement. At the target location, 3 individuals approaching from the north alley. John grabbed his binoculars and focused on the bank. There, you see them? I could make out 3 figures dressed in dark clothing, moving with the practiced coordination of people who'd done this before. They paused at the back entrance, and one of them appeared to be working on the door. Oh, that's our inside person, John said. Has to be. They're getting in too easily. My phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced at it and nearly dropped the phone when I saw who it was from. John, we have a problem. What? I just got a text from someone at the reunion. They're asking where I am, saying something urgent has come up and they need to find me. Who's it from? I looked at the message again, my blood running cold as I read the sender's name. It's from Amy Hendricks, the former bank manager's daughter. John's expression darkened. The one who used to brag about how secure the vault was? The same one? And John, ... She's asking specifically about whether I'm still at the auto shop. Tonight? Or if I'm somewhere else. We stared at each other as the implications sank in. The inside person wasn't just someone who worked at the bank. It was someone who knew me. Someone who was trying to make sure I wasn't somewhere I could interfere with their plan. "Control. This is Bradley," John said into his radio, his voice tense. "We may have a complication. Suspects appear to have local intelligence about potential witnesses." "Copy that, Sheriff. What's your recommendation?" John looked at me and I could see him making calculations, weighing risks. We proceed as planned, but Agent Thompson may be personally compromised. "Can handle it," I said. "Marcus, if they know you're involved, then we use that to our advantage. Let me text her back. Tell her I'm at home. If she's coordinating with the robbers, that information might make them careless." John considered this. "It's risky. About this is risky. But if we can make them think they're safe, they might make mistakes." He nodded slowly. "Do it. But from this point forward, we assume they know exactly who you are and what you're capable of." As I typed a response to Amy's text, I realized that this case had just become deeply personal. It wasn't just about stopping a bank robbery anymore. It was about people from my own town, people I'd grown up with, who had decided I was too much. Of a failure to be a threat, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. "Text sent," I said. I told her I'm home watching TV, feeling sorry for myself after what happened at the reunion. "Good. That should buy us some time." John raised his binoculars again. "They're inside now. Estimate 30 minutes before they reach the vault." I checked my weapon, making sure I knew exactly where everything was. In 30 minutes, Marcus Thompson, the failure, would be gone forever. Placed by Agent Thompson of the Federal Financial Crimes Task Force, it was time to find out who I really was. 20-3 minutes into the operation. Everything went sideways, John and I were monitoring the suspect's progress through thermal imaging when his radio exploded with chatter. "Control to all units. We have civilians approaching the target zone. Repeat, civilians approaching from the east." I grabbed John's binoculars and focused on the street corner. My heart sank as I recognized the figures walking toward the bank. Danny, my cousin, and behind him, my parents. Even from this distance, I could see the tension in their posture, the urgency in their movement. "They're looking for me," I said, my stomach dropping. "Danny's probably been trying to call, and when I didn't answer, how did they know to come here?" I thought about it quickly. Amy's text. If she's working with the robbers and she asked where I was, she might have told them I wasn't at home when she expected me to be. If my family went to check on me and found my apartment empty, ... They'd start searching the places you might go, John finished grimly. "Control, this is Bradley. We need those civilians redirected immediately." Negative, Sheriff. "If we break cover now, the suspects will be alerted. Can you handle it without compromising the operation?" John looked at me and I could see him weighing impossible choices. Let my family walk into a dangerous situation, or blow the entire investigation, and let the criminals escape. "I'll handle it," I said, already moving toward the SUV's door. "Marcus, wait, they won't recognize me in this gear. I can intercept them before they get close enough to alert the suspects." I checked my earpiece. "Stay in contact," slipped out of the vehicle and moved along the shadows of the storefronts, using every bit of cover to stay invisible. The Federal tactical vest felt strange under my jacket, but the weight of the badge in my pocket gave me confidence I'd never felt before. My parents were arguing as they approached, their voices carrying in the quiet night air. "I'm telling you." "Patricia, something's wrong," my father was saying. Danny said. "Marcus looked devastated when he left the reunion. What if he's done something stupid? Robert, he's 30 years old. He can take care of himself. Can he? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like we raised a son who falls apart every time life gets difficult." Danny was walking slightly ahead of them, checking his phone. His car's not at his apartment, and Mrs. Rodriguez from the corner store said she saw him driving toward downtown around 11. I was close enough now to see the worry lines on my mother's face, the way my father kept checking his watch. Despite everything that had happened at the reunion, they were out here at midnight looking for me because they were concerned. That's when Amy Hendricks stepped out of the shadows behind them. "Dr. Thompson? Mrs. Thompson?" Her voice was sugar-sweet. Exactly the tone I remembered from high school when she wanted something. "What are you doing out so late?" My parents turned, and I could see relief on their faces. Me had always been one of their favorite kids from my class. Good grades. Good family. The kind of daughter they probably wished they'd had instead of me. "Amy, dear," my mother said, "we're looking for Marcus. You haven't seen him tonight, have you?" "Actually, I have. I was just texting with him about an hour ago." Amy's smile was perfect, but from my hidden position, I could see something predatory in her eyes. "He seemed really upset about what happened at the reunion." "What exactly happened?" my father asked. "Danny said there was some kind of scene, but he wouldn't give us details." Amy's smile widened. "Oh, you don't know?" "Marcus borrowed money from Brad Hutchins and never paid it back." Brad called him out in front of everyone. It was pretty embarrassing. I saw my parents exchange glances and felt a familiar stab of shame. Even now, even with everything that had changed, hearing about my failures still hurt. "Where is he now?" Danny asked. "Well," Amy said, moving closer to them, "he said he was going somewhere to think. Somewhere quiet where he wouldn't be bothered." Through my earpiece, I heard John's urgent voice. "Marcus, the suspects are moving faster than expected. They're almost to the vault." Amy was still talking to my family, but now I could see what she was really doing. She was maneuvering them closer to the bank, using their concern for me to put them in danger. "You know," she said, "I bet he's at the old gazebo in Riverside Park. Remember how he used to go there in high school when he was upset?" Riverside Park was 3 blocks in the opposite direction from the bank. She was trying to send them away, but she was doing it too, obviously. And Danny was starting to look suspicious. "Amy," Danny said slowly, "how do you know so much about where Marcus might be? You two haven't been close in years." For just a moment, Amy's mask slipped, and I saw calculation in her eyes. I care about old friends, you know. That's when the shooting started. The sound of gunfire from inside the bank shattered the quiet night. Suddenly everything was chaos. My parents and Danny dropped to the ground. Amy screamed and ran toward an alley. And John's voice was shouting through my earpiece. "All units, shots fired. Suspects are armed and dangerous." "Agent Thompson, what's your status?" I was moving before I consciously decided to, running toward my family while speaking into my radio. 3 civilians down in the street, unknown if. "Injured, I'm moving to assist. Marcus." Danny's voice cut through the night as he saw me approaching. "What the hell are you wearing?" I reached them just as my father was helping my mother to her feet. She had a scrape on her hand from hitting the pavement, but otherwise they seemed unharmed. "Are you hurt?" I asked, automatically falling into the professional tone I'd been practicing for the last hour. "We're fine, but Marcus what?" My father stopped mid-sentence, taking in my tactical vest, the radio equipment, the federal badge visible on my jacket. "What is this?" Before I could answer, Amy reappeared from the alley, but now she wasn't alone. 2 men in dark clothing flanked her, and one of them was pointing a gun in our direction. Well, the gunman said. "Looks like our inside information was wrong. Marcus Thompson isn't home, feeling sorry for himself after all?" Through my earpiece. "Marcus, we've lost sight of you. Report your status immediately." I keyed my radio without taking my eyes off the gunman. "This is Agent Thompson. 4 civilians and 3 suspects in the street. I need backup now, Agent Thompson." Amy's voice was filled with disbelief. "Marcus, what are you talking about? You're a mechanic." "Not anymore," I said, my hand moving slowly toward my weapon. "Federal Financial Crimes Task Force. You're all under arrest." The gunman laughed. "A federal agent? This is rich." "Amy, you said this guy was a total loser." "He is." Amy's voice was rising with panic. "There's no way Marcus Thompson is a federal." "Agent, look at him. He works at Murphy's auto shop. He owes money to half the town." Actually, my father said quietly, and I could hear something changing in his voice. "That's Special Agent Thompson. and I'd suggest you put that weapon down before you make this situation much worse for yourselves." I stared at my father. Did he know my proper title? The second gunman was getting nervous. "We need to move. The cops will be here any minute." "No," the first gunman said, his weapon still trained on us. "Not until we figure out what's really going on here. If Pretty Boy Marcus really is some kind of federal agent, then this whole operation has been compromised from the beginning." Through my earpiece, I could hear John coordinating the response. "All units converge on Main Street. We have agents and civilians in immediate danger." I needed to buy time for backup to arrive, but I also needed to protect my family. The tactical training I'd received in the last hour was minimal, but my instincts told me to keep the gunman talking. "Amy," I said, not taking my eyes off the weapons pointed at us. "Why?" "Your family has money, position in this community. Why throw it all away for bank robbery?" "Because Daddy's precious bank is failing," she spat. "Did you know that? The great Riverside Savings and Loan is about to go under, and Daddy's too proud to admit it. We're going to lose everything. The house, the cars, our reputation, all of it. So you decided to steal enough money to cover the losses?" "We decided to take what should have been ours anyway." The first gunman was backing toward the bank. Entrance. "Amy's been feeding us information for months. Security codes, employee schedules, vault specifications. Tonight was supposed to be easy. Except you didn't count on Marcus," Danny said, and there was pride in his voice that I'd never heard before. "Shut up." The second gunman was clearly rattled. "Amy, we need to go. Now." But Amy was staring at me with something like hatred. "This isn't possible? You're nobody, Marcus. You're the guy who couldn't even finish college, who can't pay his debts, whose own parents disowned him tonight. There's no way you're really a federal agent. Want to see my badge?" I asked, slowly reaching into my jacket. That's when everything happened at once. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. The first gunman spun toward the sound, momentarily distracted. And my father, Dr. Robert Thompson, decided to prove that his son wasn't the only one with courage. "Nobody threatens my boy," he said, and tackled the second gunman. The gun went flying, landing near Danny's feet. My mother screamed. Amy ran. And suddenly I was moving, drawing my weapon with movements that felt more natural than they should have. Advancing on the first gunman with authority I'd never known I possessed. "Federal agent, drop your weapon." The gunman's eyes went wide as he realized his easy score had just turned into a nightmare. Behind him, I could see John and other agents surrounding the bank, cutting off all escape routes. "It's over," I said, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. "Drop the gun and put your hands where I can see them." For a moment, the gunman looked like he might fight. Then he saw the federal agents emerging from every shadow, heard the sirens getting closer, and realized he was outnumbered 10-1. The gun clattered to the pavement. "Smart choice," I said, moving to secure the weapon. "You have the right to remain silent." As I cuffed the suspect, I caught sight of my parents watching with expressions I'd never seen before. Not disappointment or embarrassment. Something that looked remarkably like awe for the first time in 8 years. I was someone they could be proud of, the Riverside community. Center looked exactly the same as when I'd left it for hours earlier. But as I walked through the doors with Sheriff Bradley beside me, everything felt different. The reunion was winding down, most of the dancing had stopped, and people were gathered in small groups talking and laughing over the remains of dinner. But the moment we entered, conversations began to die one by one as people noticed us more. Specifically, as they noticed me no longer in my wrinkled shirt and scuffed shoes, but wearing a federal tactical vest with U.S. Marshal clearly visible across the front. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sheriff Bradley's voice carried across the room with natural authority. "If I could have your attention for just a moment." The entire reunion fell silent. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward us, and I could see the confusion on familiar faces as they tried to process what they were seeing. Brad Hutchins was standing near the bar, his mouth hanging open. Jennifer Morrison had stopped mid-conversation, her phone forgotten in her hand. Even the DJ had stopped the music. "My name is Sheriff John Bradley, Colorado State Police," he continued. "About 2 hours ago, We successfully concluded a federal operation here in Riverside that prevented a major bank robbery and resulted in the arrest of 4 suspects. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I could see people looking toward the exits, wondering if they were in danger, wondering what this had to do with them. The operation was successful thanks to the exceptional work of a federal agent who went above and beyond the call of duty to protect this community. Sheriff Bradley turned toward me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Special Agent Marcus Thompson of the Federal Financial Crimes Task Force. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop in that gymnasium. I watched the faces of people I'd grown up with as they tried to reconcile the Marcus Thompson they thought they knew with the federal agent standing before them. Sarah Chen was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus? This... Is this real? Before I could answer, the community center doors opened again, and my parents walked in with Danny close behind. My mother had a bandage on her hand from where she'd scraped it on the pavement, but otherwise they looked composed, more composed than I felt, actually. My father stepped forward, and for a moment I thought he was going to speak to me privately. Instead, he addressed the entire room. What Sheriff Bradley isn't telling you, my father said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent decades earning respect in this community, is that Agent Thompson risked his life tonight to protect civilians who were in danger, including his own family. My mother moved to stand beside my father, and when she spoke, her voice was clear and proud. Earlier tonight, in this very room, we said some things we regret. We told our son he wasn't worthy of the Thompson name. She paused, looking directly at me. We were wrong. We were wrong about what success looks like. We were wrong about what matters, and we were wrong about the man we raised. The crowd was hanging on every word. Could see Brad shifting uncomfortably, probably remembering his harsh words from earlier in the evening. Marcus, my father continued, we owe you an apology. It's not just for tonight, but for the past several years. We were so focused on the success we thought you should have that we completely missed the success you were actually achieving. Sheriff Bradley stepped forward again. Dr. and Mrs. Thompson are referring to the fact that Agent Thompson has been on our radar for over 2 years. Every time there was an incident in this community where someone went above and beyond to help others, his name came up. When a child went missing, he provided crucial investigative assistance. When tourists needed medical help, he was there with first aid and support. When elderly residents were victimized by scams, he tracked down the perpetrators. I could see the expressions on people's faces changing as they heard this. The story of Marcus Thompson was being rewritten in real time, from failure to community hero. But Agent Thompson's most impressive quality, Sheriff Bradley continued, isn't his investigative skills or his courage under pressure. It's his character. Tonight, he drove a stranger to Denver because her car had broken down. That act of kindness prevented a business failure that would have cost 800 people their jobs. Jennifer Morrison spoke up from the crowd. You're saying that by helping someone with car trouble, Marcus saved 800 jobs? That's exactly what I'm saying. Because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness have the biggest consequences. Danny stepped forward, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. And that's not even the best part. Tell them about the salary, Marcus. I felt my face flush. Danny, that's not federal agents at your level. Start at $85,000 a year, Sheriff Bradley said with a slight smile. Plus full benefits, plus opportunities for advancement that could lead to 6-figure salaries within a few years. The number hit the crowd like a physical blow. I could see people doing mental calculations, comparing that figure to their own incomes. Brad Hutchins looked particularly stunned. His construction company was successful. But federal law enforcement salaries were nothing to sneeze at. There's something else, my mother said, and now her voice was soft with emotion. Sheriff Bradley told us that Marcus has been offered a position based in Denver, but with jurisdiction throughout Colorado. He'll be investigating financial crimes, protecting communities just like this one. Sarah Chen started clapping, and within seconds the entire reunion had erupted in applause. But it wasn't polite, social applause. It was genuine enthusiasm. The kind of response you give when someone from your community achieves something extraordinary. As the applause died down, Brad Hutchins stepped forward. He looked uncomfortable, embarrassed, like a man who'd just realized he'd made a significant error in judgment. "Marcus," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet room, "I owe you an apology. What I said earlier tonight, about you being a failure, about not paying back the money." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his checkbook. "The truth is, I never should have loaned money to a friend with strings attached. Consider the debt forgiven." "Brad, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I want to do more than that." He started writing a check. "My construction company has federal contracts. We're always looking for security consultants, people who understand financial crime prevention. If you're interested, I'd like to offer you a retainer of $5,000 to help us improve our compliance programs." Before I could respond, other voices started calling out. "Hey, Thompson Security Consulting has a nice ring to it," someone shouted from the back. "My real estate company could use someone like that too," another voice added. Within minutes, I had half a dozen business cards thrust into my hands, people offering consulting work, asking for my contact information, treating me like the success story I'd never imagined could be. But the moment that meant the most came when the crowd started to disperse and my parents approached me directly. "Son," my father said, and the word carried weight it hadn't had in years, "we're proud of you. It's not because of the badge or the salary or the federal appointment. We're proud because you never stopped being the person we raised you to be, even when we lost sight of that." My mother stepped forward and, for the first time in longer than I could remember, hugged me like she meant it. "I love you, Marcus. I'm sorry it took almost losing you for us to remember what really matters. I love you too, Mom." My family embraced me in the middle of the Riverside Community Center, surrounded by classmates who were seeing me with completely new eyes. I realized that this was what transformation really looked like. Not a sudden change from failure to success, but the moment when people finally see you for who you've always been. The reunion was over. But my real life was just beginning. 6 months later, I was sitting in my Denver office when I got a call from Victoria Ashworth. Her company had not only survived but was thriving, and she wanted to offer me a position as director of corporate security. The salary was double what the federal government was paying me. I politely declined. Some things are worth more than money, but I did accept her invitation to dinner. It's eventually much more than that, after all. The best stories are the ones where helping someone else ends up changing your own life in ways you never imagined. And sometimes, people who say, "You're no son of ours," are the same people who end up saying, "We couldn't be prouder of the man you've become." The difference is just a matter of time, patience, and faith in who you really are. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.